So hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here outside the Pavata Kuti on a large rock, and thought to record a short Dhamma discussion for the internet. So I thought that could start with just a little meditation, so can lean forward a bit and arch the spine, and look about 3 feet in front, and close our eyes. And can spread thoughts of goodwill to our right hand side, wishing may all beings to my right be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can make the mind infinite, can make it unbounded, all the way to the ends of the universe and beyond, in every dimension. May all beings to my right be happy and at ease. And we can spread thoughts of goodwill to our right hand side and our left hand side. May all beings to my right and my left be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can spread thoughts of goodwill to our right hand side, our left hand side, and in front. May all beings to my right, my left, and in front be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can spread thoughts of goodwill to our right hand side, our left hand side, in front, behind, in all 4 directions. May all beings in all 4 directions be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can spread thoughts of goodwill to our right hand side, our left hand side, in front, behind, and above. May all beings in all 4 directions and above be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. So we can spread thoughts of goodwill to our right hand side, our left hand side, in front, behind, above, below, all around in every direction everywhere. May all beings all around in every direction everywhere be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can make the mind infinite, can make it unbounded, all the way to the ends of the universe and beyond, in every dimension. May all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. And before we finish meditating, you can spend a little bit of time contemplating impermanence, how everything that arises is subject to ceasing. It's not me, it's not mine, and to cling to it is suffering. And can open our eyes and do a short Dhamma discussion for the internet. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. So I hope that everybody's keeping well wherever it might be. And so I was discussing with somebody a bit about body contemplation, and more or less the question came up, how does one do contemplation of the body? So almost all the Vipassana, what we might call the Vipassana topics that the Buddha gives, they have like a similar approach to them, in that they're kind of perception meditations. And these perception meditations, basically what we're doing is we're bringing up perceptions to counter the default perceptions that go on in the mind. So for the body, the default perception is usually like, this body is mine. So whenever one thinks about a person, you say like, this person's name, then usually their face will come up in a person's in an image in the person's mind. If a different face came up, it wouldn't seem like that person. And so there can be this strong association with an identity and the body. Kind of one's sense of identity, of stability, can be wrapped up in one's body and the reactions that other people have to one as a result of the appearance of one's body, or how it moves, or how one can use one's body, something like this. So what one wants to do then is, oftentimes there's these benefits that one can get from using the body. So basically all of the, what we might call the strings of sensual pleasures that can come to one, they come to one through the body, things that are pleasant for one's eye or ear or nose or tongue or to touch, or even for one's mind. These things are all accessed in the human realm more or less through the body. Not exclusively, but more or less these kind of sensual pleasures can be accessed through the body, or things that are connected with the sense faculties that are connected with the body. So because of this, a person kind of goes through life, and they can have this very strong attachment to the body, that it's something that's good, something that's excellent, and something that's bringing a lot of joy, and it's something that's who they are. So whenever this kind of perception comes up, one can learn to counter it by thinking about the body as something that's going to decay, and thinking about the body as something that's painful, thinking about the body as something that's not self. This does not belong to me. When one goes into an old folks' home, in the West at least, oftentimes we don't see the process of the decay of the body, because a lot of it is segregated in say older folks' homes, or it's not necessarily so open on the street when people are really, really suffering. Or it's in hospitals, these kind of things. We don't see what their life was like before, when they were at the apex of their power, their body was at the apex of its ability. So what we want to do, if we want to start contemplating the body for the purpose of uprooting an idea that this body is mine, or uprooting the kind of fear that comes when one remains attached to all the various sensual pleasures that are there because one has a body and can access them, is one wants to start to bring up these kind of ideas that the body is not permanent, it's not mine, and look how it's going to be painful. Look how it is painful right now. Now, whenever something happens to the body, one gets really sick, or or one gets wounds, or one gets an injury, and one can't do the things with the body that one could when one was 20 or 15 or 30, depending whatever one's age might be. Then when these things happen, usually what comes up in the mind is, oh, this is something temporary. This is a deviation from the norm. This is something that's a slight blip from what's normal, from what should be happening with my body. So one wants to bring this counter perception up to this. This is the background perception that can operate. But wait a minute, this is what's normal with the body. This is what happens to the body. This kind of pain that I'm feeling now that I'm sick, this is part of having a body, and it's going to, as I get older, these kind of conditions will increase, they'll get worse. This is the flip side of having this body. I will have these kind of conditions to it. So one wants to bring up these kind of counter perceptions to ward off this perception, like, oh, this is a blip, and then once the sickness is over, the injury is slightly healed or something, then one goes back to one's normal way of thinking, like, okay, things are fine, and this is how the body will continue. So this is said to be a kind of a path of dukkha patipada, because when things are going fine, one doesn't really want to rain on one's parade, thinking about how the body's going to fall apart and these kind of things. Because one of the things that happens with this is it actually can start to place some limits on a person's ability to enjoy outward sensual pleasures. And we're considering that even the ability to see or hear or touch or taste, even these faculties will start to diminish. And this is where a person derives their happiness and can create this sense of shakiness around that. So in addition to cultivating these perceptions, when these kind of perceptions come up, it's not pleasant. One wants to also be cultivating this sense restraint when one goes out into the world. In other words, one wants to start to use the things that one encounters in one's daily life for Dhamma purposes and not for the purpose of having like a good time, good kind of sensual indulgence. So as bhikkhus, we have these reflections about what we're using the robe for. It's just to ward off cold and heat. Alms food is just to provide strength, and medicines are basically just to cure our illness. And a shelter is so that we can ward off mosquitoes and basically live comfortably, practicing for the sake of the Dhamma. So to the extent that a person uses these things with this perception in mind, it's not so much of a threat when the body starts to decay, or to think that the body's going to decay. Actually, if one uses these things with this perception in mind, it's a spur when one thinks that the body is not mine, it's going to decay, because what one wants to look for is that something that's safe, that's not the body, and something that's safe, that's not sensual pleasures. We have to look for these things outside of the realm of sensual pleasures. We have to look to them through meditation, through the practice of the Dhamma. So more and more one can start to bring up these counter cultivations to the usual cultivation. Oh, this body is mine. There's different things one can do to try to help this. One can try to stop looking in mirrors as much. If one does look in mirrors, then just to try to look at the portion of the face that's necessary, not to take in the whole face. And sometimes people look at their face in the mirror like 20 or 30 times a day. Try to make it people try to make their face really, really beautiful, because this influences how other people treat them. But what happens when that occurs is that there's this kind of re-strengthening of attachment to one's body, re-strengthening of one's desire to use it to get more external sensual pleasures. One might find that if one stops looking in the mirror as much, or stops trying to take in the whole face, just looking in the mirror for the sake of finding illness or cuts and these kind of things, then what happens is one's strong sense of association with the body can help to diminish it. And a lot of this kind of gets associated up when we look at our face. We try to dress up our face, beautify our face, and these kind of things. So, and of course, I just mentioned this has to go in hand with sense restraint, and also with this desire to search for a type of happiness that isn't depend on the sensual pleasures. These kind of things go together. The second way that one can kind of approach body contemplation is to approach it through the loathsomeness aspect of it. In other words, basically inside the body are a number of really loathsome, really disgusting things. All the internal organs are really loathsome and really disgusting. So I've actually had a really nice opportunity in Buddhist countries, in Thailand and once here. Some monks go quite often, but to go to these autopsies. And you can look at pictures of a person's internal organs, but actually when they cut open corpses, there's this smell. And the smell even gets in your robes, and it smells for days after. There's also the sounds that occur when one sees these kind of organs. The organs are moving around and these kind of things. One of the things is the smell, the way that a body actually smells. It's kind of a body, basically, if it isn't washed frequently, almost every day, it starts to really smell terrible. And if anybody has ever smelled like a decaying dead body, the smell is just something that it actually gets into one's clothes. It can get into one's nose, and one is even kind of spitting the smell out hours later. And you kind of think about this, and there's almost nothing that has that kind of quality that we really consider beautiful. Like gems don't have this quality where they're becoming disgusting all the time, or things that they touch over long periods of time become disgusting. If we put a gem on a piece of cloth, that cloth doesn't get dirty, but if a body touches a piece of cloth, it will get dirty over just a couple days, and the cloth will start to stink and smell. So the body has, the Buddha describes that the body has different openings, and they're constantly oozing just disgusting, filthy things. Almost every opening that there might be in a body has oozing things. So one can basically think about it in all these various ways. When one thinks about this as a meditation topic, one can go through the various 32 parts of the body. There's in the classical suttas, there's 31. The commentaries add the brain, and the brain is given as a contemplation in the Sutta Nipata, so it's reasonable to have 32 if one wants. One wants to just do 31, that's fine. But one can go through the list of these parts kind of imagining them. And there's different recommendations people give. There's people who can be roughly divided into two types. There's types of people who kind of get visions when they meditate, and there's types of people who don't. For the types of people who get visions when they meditate, if they get a vision of a particular corpse or a particular body part, that's said to mean that's the body part or the image that they should pursue in their contemplation. And they should bring that up more frequently, try to make it more and more of a background perception for them when they see another person's body. They just, for example, instead of seeing the body, they just see heart. Think about the disgustingness of the heart, and this is said to spread. Another way is to kind of go through these kind of 32 parts and kind of have them almost like a mantra. And one may find that at certain times, certain aspects of the body are more disgusting than others. And kind of one can think about excrement to a certain extent. One keeps thinking about it, it gets normal. And then so other times one may have to think about a different part to bring up the feeling of disgust. So this is something also that's common with basically all the Vipassana topics that one might pursue, is that one might find if one keeps trying to go at it just from the same angle, then it's like a knife that keeps striking a rock, it just gets dull. So one has to kind of go at it from different angles, kind of contemplate it in different ways to keep the contemplation fresh, to keep it effective. And the measure of the effectiveness in this case is whether or not one's lust diminishes when it's there, and whether or not one can remove or eliminate that lust. So one wants to keep this kind of contemplation going and make it more and more of a default perception for one. So there was actually a couple of different times that I've had the chance to ask questions about body contemplation from monks who had been very, very successful in their meditation practice. And it was interesting that the answers that they gave were relatively brief. It wasn't like giving a big technique and then laying out all the steps along the way of how it would be. Of course, they could do it for them, like what happened to them. But for every person, that process will be different. It's not going to be the exact same for every single person. So what they tended to say was, basically, whatever you do to contemplate the body that eliminates your lust, keep doing that. It's kind of a very brief thing. So it's not the case that one can always just go through a set way or a set technique of doing things, but there are these various approaches. One can try to stick with one part and illuminate the disgusting parts of the rest of the body. One can kind of go through the list and see if there's a particular body part or just have this general perception of the list in mind, or the various parts of the body when one sees a person. One can there's also these various systems in the body, like the digestive system. When one takes in food and chews it, this is kind of food that's in the mouth, it's mixing with saliva, It goes down into the stomach and it mixes with bile and it becomes vomit. And then it goes into the intestines. It becomes kind of a pseudo-excrement. It's actually this kind of excrement where the body derives nutrients. Apparently when it's in the intestines, and my science isn't that great, but my memory from all those years ago is that the body's actually deriving nutrients as it travels through the intestines and basically becomes excrement when it exits. So there's these systems to the body that occur too. And when one thinks about these systems can also be something pretty disgusting, this kind of digestive system that kind of goes through. So there's all these different ways to come at it, but the important thing is that one of the words that's often used is to catch up with a person's arome. In Thai they have this word arome, which means the kind of mood. And it's important when the mood arises to catch it before it kind of hijacks the mind, and the mind is often to some type of thinking that's based on lust, or some type of thinking based on how the body is mind, reifying the sense of self. So there's also this speed that's needed to do these Vipassana topics, where when this perception arises, one notices it and one is able to catch it and counter it. That's a kind of hard work. So as one does this, the measure of one's success is if one is looking at objects that used to excite lust and they don't excite lust as much anymore. That lust that one has should diminish, and one should not notice it arising as much. There's also going to be correlations in one's daily life to this. So the lust is one thing, also with the idea that this body is mine. It's a type of identity that one should notice this kind of attachment or worry around the body reducing if one is practicing that. It's kind of one's reliance on the body can become less and less. So the body there's these kind of two topics in the canon. There's the breath and contemplation of the body. They tend to get a certain special prominence in the suttas. And so this topic of contemplating the body, apparently it was one of the first topics or one of the most recommended topics that the Buddha gave even before Anapanasati. But then several monks went and killed themselves because they became too disgusted with their body, and the Buddha gave Anapanasati instead. So one of the last things is that there's all these different topics in the canon for meditation. If one wants to take up the practice of contemplating the body, then it's also good to test it out to see if one has an affinity for it. If one kind of enjoys this type of contemplation and it feels like one is progressing. There's this kind of feeling that one's defilements are diminishing. And this might mean that this is an appropriate topic. It's also good if one is meditating alone, if one's a beginning meditator, maybe not to take on body contemplation right away, because it's one of the topics where if one doesn't take it on skillfully, then there can be all these unpleasant things that can happen in one's mind, thinking about corpses and thinking about internal organs and these kind of things. But if it's used rightly, then this is one of the most powerful meditation topics that the Buddha gives. And in the Thai forest tradition, almost all the masters give it strong emphasis and recommend to do it very strongly, because it has such power to eliminate some of the most basic defilements in the mind, and that is kind of this attachment to a self and this attachment to lust, which is also coupled with hate. Okay, so leave that for reflection, and wishing everybody all the blessings of Dhamma practice and all the success in body contemplation.